I'm going to give folks just a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Going to wait just one more minute, and then we're going to get going here. A couple people joining up right now. Going to wait on them, and I'll get going. Okay. Well, first of all, welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone attending the session today and taking a look at what we're doing with the hub. I will endeavor to talk a little bit about the Stratum Hub and more about the ways to populate it, and we'll see where that goes. I think the objective today is to give you an overview of a lot of the things that you can see and see and do in terms of getting data into Stratum. So with that, probably the first thing to do is to introduce myself. My name's Frank Bunker. I am involved with our development process here. I probably know a lot of you already, but if you haven't met me, my responsibilities are, as I mentioned, on the development side, is along with the product and product strategy. I also help some on the post-sale side as well. So helping people get in there. Now, today I want to talk, as I mentioned, a little bit about the Stratum Data Hub. And then I want to talk about some of the new ways and newer ways, I should say, to get data into it. And then we'll open the door for some Q&A after that as well. So we'll see where that goes. Let's see. First thing, Stratum Data Hub. Let's just talk a little bit about the Stratum Data Hub and what that is. So what our objective in thinking of Stratum as more of a hub and what that means with the development and work that we're doing around that is to expand the role of Stratum to include new and expanded sets of information you might want to have in Stratum. And to that end, we want to include new and simple ways to get information into Stratum so that you have an ability to collect information, not only like you do, and I'll say traditionally today through whatever ETL process you use to get data into Stratum today, but to add to that data with data that analysts can get into Stratum as well. And I'll break those analysts into kind of two groups. Just I'll say a general information analyst that has varying degrees of technical expertise, and then a pure tech analyst as well. So we'll talk about some of that. And when we think about that, it's not only Stratum as a data hub, it's not only that process of making it simpler to get information into Stratum, but ultimately, and what we're going to talk about next week in the session next week, is how other ways and new ways you can get information out of the data hub. And that really gets us into, obviously, you know about Stratum Viewer, but there's dashboards, there's distribution, there's a whole set of connectors that have either, some have been delivered, some we're working on, and we'll talk about more about those. So that's kind of what we think of when we talk about the Stratum Data Hub. And when we visualize that, it looks something like this. And today we're going to talk about the stuff that is not grayed out, but the grayed out stuff is the other side of the Stratum Hub. So in the middle, you have the collection of data that you know is Stratum today, regardless of how that information has gotten there. And then on the left, what we're looking at is a number of different ways to accumulate information into Stratum, and really do that through two different things. One is what we think of as planning or the analyst hub, the planning module or the analyst hub, which has multiple ways you can get there. And some of them are existing. You guys may or may not know data copy. There's been a number of sessions on data copy and how to use that in conjunction with multi-level planning to create new sets of data and interact with that and make changes to that data directly in Stratum. We also introduced a spreadsheet import. We call it data import. So that's a set of feature function that allows you to take a set of data in Excel and directly put that into Stratum. And then the last thing, which is new, and will be in the upcoming release of 7.2, I'll talk more about the delivery dates on that at the end, is the ability for you to say and take all of your products, for example, or your customers or your product groups and regroup those together or reaggregate those into different levels. So you can see different rolled up levels of aggregation that don't necessarily come from your ERP or your product master systems, things like that. You can actually create these outside of your ERP system and have these as levels for analysis that are available in Stratum. So you can maintain all of this. The interface into that is through an Excel file, and I'll show a little bit of that as well. So that's really the target of how you can get additional data into Stratum. Then the other part of that, as an analyst, as a tech analyst, you also have something we think of what we call Stratum Link. And this allows me to reach out to two key sources, to databases directly into a database. So you might have other stuff in your ERP, or you might have information in other files or tables that you've built, anything from Access to other things locally in SQL Server, for example, you might have on your system. And then the other place it lets you reach out to is internet sources. I have an example that's going to show, say, reaching up into the cloud to get information out of a Salesforce CRM system and how you can bring that into Stratum. So I'm just going to show quick overviews of all these things. It's too much to cover in a half hour, but in detail. But there are sessions out there. If you go out and go to sylvan.com and look at the Sylvan resource center there, that you'll find copies of a lot of these insight classes that we've done. And there's a number of insight classes on most of these topics where you can get into the detail. So what I'm going to do today is give you a good overview, I hope, and we'll see where that goes. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about how all the different ways. I just kind of went through them. So there's really 5 different ways, newer ways you can get data into Stratum as an analyst. And I'm leaving out the 6th one at the bottom, where it's really IT specialists in the past have used traditional ETL, whether it's SSIS, RPG, if you're on the 400, SQL, things of that nature to get data into Stratum. There's really at least 5 different ways that you can get there, and there might be some others that people can think of or are aware of. But I'm going to start with these, the new data import I'm going to talk about. Then I'll go to the Stratum Data Import, where you can augment your existing data. And then I'll talk a little bit about data copy and multi-level planning. And then I'll show a little bit of Stratum Link, and we'll get to see a little bit of all that. So the first thing is, let's say you had a spreadsheet and you wanted to get that spreadsheet into Stratum. So here I've got a spreadsheet. This represents a budget. I've got, over here, I've got my dimensions. I just put colors at the top of this. And by the way, this spreadsheet originally came from Stratum, for those of you that recognize the view detail here. But I pulled in data, doesn't matter where it came from, doesn't have to come from Stratum. You can just create a spreadsheet. And then over on the left, or I'm sorry, my other left, on the right here, I have a list of numbers that are really calculations off of last year's sales that I want to use for my current year budget. So this is a pretty regular spreadsheet. We think of this as a time series spreadsheet, which means it's got stuff going across the top. And now I can, using the new data import facility, I can very easily get that data into Stratum. And as I jump over here, you'll see I've gone into data import. I'm actually in the data mapping window. So you can go in, you reference the spreadsheet, you just open the spreadsheet in Stratum. We have an open dialog, and it brings it into Stratum and allows me to map it into Stratum. So basically it says, hey, for each column in the spreadsheet, where do you want that to go? And in this particular case, you can see I had a column in the spreadsheet to represent a division. So I mapped it into the division. I had one for region, I had one for products, I had one for customers. So I mapped that stuff in. And then out here on the right, I've got a series of columns that really represent my months. So I mapped this to January, February, March, as you might expect, and I put that in a specific measure. So now I have an amount to go along with this combinations of dimensions. And I can go ahead and import that information as simply as just clicking this button. And now this information would become available in Stratum for me to compare my sales against. And if I wanted to update this information, I could jump back into my spreadsheet. I can make adjustments here and then just jump right back into Stratum, re-import that spreadsheet. And this import process takes minutes. It's not something that you have to submit and wait on. It's very quick and allows me to get data and make changes to it and update it. And I can actually decide if I want to replace all the data I have, or I can go up, I can do, you can see up here, replace or add. So that's one form of data and one example of the kinds of data that you might want to get into Stratum, and one way you can do it in data import. Another option in data import is the idea of actually just importing actual transactions. And if I bring up this other spreadsheet that I have, this actually is a series of transactions. You can see the date going down the side. So it's a little different than the spreadsheet I showed before where we had months going across the top. Here I just have a spreadsheet that has dates going down the side. I've got, again, what you might think of in Stratum terminology as dimensions, and I've got those in here. So, and I've got out on the end here, I've got some transaction amounts at this point. This is actually data from a CRM system, importing what are called opportunities, and those opportunities have a list price associated with them, a cost, number of units, and amount, list price, and standard cost. So I've got some different things that different measures, which you might think of as measures, but these are a spreadsheet, and I downloaded this data from our CRM system, and now I want to import that into Stratum, and I can do that back in Stratum with just another data mapping, using that same data import, but the mapping's a little different now, right? In this first column, you'll note actually Stratum had not heard of this column before. The data import will remember as you import different spreadsheets and different terminology in the spreadsheets, it'll recognize that. Like here, it recognized division, the word division. It knew you had mapped that before, or I had mapped that before to division, so it remembers that. So up here, I just have to say, hey, this is actually a date, and then it recognizes that as a date, and it'll go ahead and let me import that. I can pick the date format here. This is actually month, day, year. So, oops, month, day, year, I think month, day, year. Here we go. So this will allow me to import that data. So, that's all there is to mapping the spreadsheet. It'll come in, it'll map it. You'll see out here on the far right, once again, I have the measures. So I'm bringing in into my category that I have in Stratum, I'm mapping in the working units, the amount, the list, the price, the expected price versus the opportunity standard cost, things like that. So I'm bringing that in, but I'm just mapping this data. And once again, I just click the run button. This data would import. As I said, it only takes, a minute or a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes to import this data, and then you're ready to go. And I could look at this data in Stratum and take advantage of it in Stratum and understand for any given product what I've imported. So that's one facility that we have when we talk about how to get data into Stratum, is the Stratum Data Import. And that's a relatively new feature for those of you that are on any version of what I think this came out in 7.1. You need to get up at least to 7.1. I'll talk a little bit about versions here at the end of the process here. The other thing the next thing that I wanted to talk about was our new Stratum attribute import, or master file import. So this allows me to import information to create new and different roll-ups within Stratum. So this allows me to say, hey, I've got all my products, I import them from my ERP, or I've got all my ISBNs, or whatever it might be. It might be customers. It could be different in any dimension you have in Stratum, but I'm importing that data from my ERP today. But what I would like to do is augment that data and provide some different attribute information. Maybe it's just descriptive, or I want that attribute information to actually be a way to do roll-ups. So I want to create a new dimension in Stratum that's the sum of my products a certain way. And as an example of that, let me grab another spreadsheet here. And show you what this would look like in my demo for our products. One of the things I did was, or that we did, we just got a list of products down the side. So this is my existing product dimension, and this is the products that I actually want to group a new way. I don't have to have all my products here. I know my example, I've only got, I don't know, 40 or 50 products here, but it doesn't matter. Because if you have hundreds of thousands of products, you don't have to regroup all of them, just the ones you're interested in looking at. And there's a default value that will be assigned to the ones you don't work on. But here you can see, then I wanted to assign a new product market group code. So I actually, in my demo, and I'll show this in just a sec, I do have something called the group code that's coming from my ERP, but it's not the group code that my marketing group wanted, that groups things together into one of two categories from a marketing standpoint. They wanted to see all the products in one category or another. And you can do that. I create a spreadsheet like that. Again, if I go into Stratum, what you're going to see is let me go ahead and open this. I'm just going to go into my master data import here. And what you'll see is, once again, a very simple way, that same mapping window that we just saw for the data import, we also use that same technology here to go ahead and import what these things would look like. So it just imported that spreadsheet I was looking at. You can see how I mapped it to this particular attribute. I specified that this is the product dimension. Again, Stratum recognized the terminology I used in my spreadsheet and mapped that for me automatically. But if it didn't recognize what I had in the spreadsheet, you would have to use these drop downs to indicate what things are. That's all there is to it. Again, I just click the button and that would import the data into Stratum. Once I've done that, I actually can go ahead and see what the result of that data is. And as I mentioned, I've got in Stratum, I have a existing dimension that represents the product group, which comes over from my ERP system. And that's what this is right here. So I'm now looking at my product groups, but I just mapped everything to my new dimension, which we call the product marketing group. And if I just go down the list here, I'll find my new product market group code. And I'll say, hey, I want to see my data that way instead. So I'm going to go ahead and put that at the beginning of my view. And now I've got my product group codes, and I can actually, I can do anything I want. It's just a regular dimension. Now I can see, drill down from division to my product group codes, and then ultimately those things group together my products. And for any one of these, or I'll just drop my product in here, it'll subtotal all my products. So it shows me how the products within those marketing group codes did. So I was able to regroup all of my products under a new set of codes, which is represented in this column here, without IT being involved in the process. I was able to go through Excel, define what I wanted, import that, and then see the results here immediately in Stratum. So this is a way for you to create new attributes and or new rollups. And when I say it's an attribute, if I come here and I say add the attribute relationships, you'll see here that somewhere in here, I'm hoping I can show the product marketing group code. There it is. I can add that. And just like the descriptive information, that'll show up as part of the product as well. So, if I just needed a descriptive piece in here, I was trying to, put something descriptive about my customers, my reps, whatever it may be, I can do it so they just show up this way. And I can sort on those things just like a regular attribute. So that's a new feature that's going to be coming out in 7.2. And I'll talk a little bit more about 7.2 in a little bit. By the way, I'm showing this demo in a internal version of 7.2, and you can see one of the other big changes that came out in 7.2 was a look and feel change. You now have some more control over what the grid looks like, the colors in the grid, things like that. You can find there's a session out in the Insight classes about that stuff if you want more info on that. The other change that I got good feedback on the other day from someone was you can actually now include or exclude on the filters in 7.2. So that's a new feature as well, but not what today's topic is about. So then, let's talk a little bit about data copy and multi-level planning updates. So in data copy is a feature that we added. a couple of releases ago that allows an analyst to take a set of information when they're in Stratum and go ahead and copy that to create a new set of data in Stratum. The reason, the most classic reason that people do this is they want to create an example or a set of data based on last year's sales, and they want that to be, you know, a new budget or a new plan or a new forecast, whatever you call it, based on last year's sales. And you basically can set up the data mapping here to say, hey, I want to copy from, in my case, my actual sales over my budget. I'm going to do dollars and units, so you can pick your measures. You map the time, so you can say, you know, I want all the months or all the weeks, whatever level you have the data at, you can map that over. So you can, months, weeks would be the common thing we see. And I can also do it for certain sets of data. So I can say, hey, I want to filter to only bring the East over. And why would I do that? Well, as I'm creating this new set of data for Stratum, I might want to apply a factor to that to say, hey, for that particular region, we're going to be up by a couple of percentage points. That's what we're thinking. So I'm going to bring that over and map that into Stratum, but up a couple percentage points. So I can do that, and I can copy that over, and I can run those copies, and I can run a series of copies because I can either replace or append data as I do these copies. And you can see here was one I was working on the East, and then I did the West. So that's how the data got in there. And then ultimately I can come into Stratum, and once I've copied that data over and I've created a plan, I can do even more detailed analysis on that, or detailed changes to it by coming into Stratum, opening up a planning view, and actually making direct changes to that data. Remember I said, for example, I did it by region. I can come in here and you can see that now I can make changes to the West or the East. I've got that data over here. Actually, I haven't run the copy yet for the West, but I have it for the East. And I can do this, and I've got this at the brand level as well, so I can make changes at the brand level. And I can come in here and I can change any one of these. So I can make an adjustment here for those of you that haven't used planning in the past. I've got my next 3 months. I'm looking out 3 months here. I can make a change here, and I'll make that 25,000. Enter that. I could actually do a change at the bottom. This is 462 in total. I want the total to be 500. And when I do that, it's going to prorate that across all of those. So this is a multi-level planning example where I'm making changes currently at the brand level. Actually, I made it at the total of all the brands, and it's going to roll those changes up into the East when I say accept these changes. It's also going to push them down actually to the product level as well. I have this data all the way down, so it's going to prorate any of my changes down across the product. So that's the basic idea of planning. Again, there's a run button up here. You click this, and these updates are immediate. It'll show the result of these, so I can now see these and see what the result will be when I start to compare this to sales, for example, which would be the classic thing that people are doing, is they're using this data either to understand how they're performing from a sales standpoint, or they're using it on the supply chain side to understand, hey, this is in fact the number of units that we think we're going to do in the next upcoming months. Do I have the inventory and the expected inventory to cover off what I think I'm doing there? So different ways you can use that data. So back to our PowerPoint here, and you'll see I've talked about 4 different ways you can manipulate and get information into Stratum that are available to the analyst. None of that required IT to run an update for you, to program anything. You can just do that either through Excel or through Stratum itself, and working with data that's already in Stratum. So 4 different ways you can update the data hub in Stratum so that you can use that data. And remember that our objective here is to simplify the idea of getting information into Stratum, adding new data for analytical purposes into Stratum, and then ultimately what we'll talk about next week is then how other ways besides what I've been showing, which is obviously Viewer and Stratum Viewer, but other ways you can take advantage of that data. So the last thing I want to talk about today is Stratum Link, and how I might go get data either from the internet or from a database, and the facility you can use to do that. If I go over here and I open up Stratum Link, this is a solution that we introduced boy, mid to late last year. I don't remember, third quarter maybe. And this allows me to basically map information from one place to another. Actually, what I have up right now, I didn't mean to have this up, but this actually lets me profile the data. So I can go ahead and I'm looking at a customer master here, and I can, for example, here I'm highlighted the zip code. I can see my zip codes are actually in my customer master are entered 3 different ways. Some of them just have one number, some of them have a number space, another set of numbers. So that's probably a series of US zip codes that have the initial zip code plus the detail at the end. And then one of them has a dash in the middle. So anyways, not pertinent to today's discussion, but that's a profiling feature that's part of Stratum Link. But the other important thing here is I can come in and I can say, for example, here I've got open purchase orders, and I can, very simply, I'm not going to go through the detail here, but I specify, hey, where do I want my purchase orders to come from? And then over on the right here, I can actually map those, map that data into places in specific locations in Stratum. And then this will allow me as a user, I can actually come out here and I could actually run this. So I could run this immediately and have that data populate Stratum immediately. Or I can actually schedule stuff as well. So I'm in here and you can see up here, I've got a load purchase orders that's scheduled to run on I forget, every day at 10 or something. I forget when I schedule this, but yeah, 10 p.m. this thing runs. So, so you can do that. The other thing you can do is as I mentioned, you can actually get data from the internet. So here I've got a cloud-based solution. I've got data up in Salesforce. I've got that mapped into Stratum. This load, actually, let me just show you the result here. So when I click view result, this is actually going to go out to the web. That just went out to the cloud and pulled down account data for me from my Salesforce implementation. So Stratum Link allows me to build through the APIs that Salesforce has available. It allows me to go ahead and grab data out of the cloud. So that's just a quick overview of the things, the different ways that we have. So that was 5 different ways you can get information out there or get information up into Stratum. The 6th, as I mentioned, traditional ETL, all you guys are doing that in some form or fashion today. I wasn't really going to talk about that. Just a couple of quick things for Q&A. Let me go ahead. I'll unmute the phone. I think I can unmute everybody. I tried to unmute everyone anyways. Well, you can ask questions via chat. I apologize, but a couple other things.
Can you hear me?
Just finishing up. So upcoming release of 7.2, you will see an announcement in the next week or 2 on this. The actual coding or code complete on 7.2 is doing some final wrap testing, and then that's going to get out to everyone. And then the other thing is there is a follow-on session to today's session, which talks about once we've collected information in the Stratum Data Hub, what are some of the new ways you can get that information? Well, obviously, you can get there via Stratum Viewer, but we've got connectors. We've got a connector that we introduced for Power BI, which allows me to directly reference information from Stratum and Power BI. And then we've got information on the new Excel connector. So we'll have that and an upcoming SSRS connector. In terms of, I did get a question via chat, and I apologize. I think my audio was off. But yes, John, it does set up virtual dimensions immediately. So you specify that in the setup for that, which I didn't go through, but there is a setup in the admin features of Stratum that allow you to go ahead and specify that you want this attribute to be what you guys know as a virtual dimension or an attribute hierarchy, and then that will happen when the update happens. That's it. I kind of ran up against the time limit, but are there any other questions? Anybody got anything? Well, as always, we recorded this session, so it'll be out there and you'll be able to see a refresh of this. I certainly invite everyone to attend next week's session, which will have information on getting data, new ways to get information out of the Data focusing predominantly on Power BI and Excel, some new ways to do stuff in both of those solutions. So with that, I hope everyone had a great new year and has a great weekend.